Legends tell of the Crusades of the Golden Order. Written in blood and stone, the Order quelled the earth of the Revenger of Castle Morn, the enigmatic Stormlord, the invading colossal ancient dragons, the chosen vessels of the fell god, and the ruthless divine army of the Horn Sent. All felled in battle, their influence lost to the history books, their remnants sent to the corners of the earth into hiding and imprisonment. The Golden Order was truly an unstoppable force, yet somehow a band of less than 20 knights was their immovable object. Two distinct wars were fought on the battlegrounds of Liurnia. The Golden Order sought to conquer the deeply rich culture of sorcerers and lay claim to the school of Ray Lucaria to complete their conquest across the lands between. Both times the Golden Order failed to do so, having to finish the conflict in a stalemate headed by a political merging of the royal houses of the Golden Lineage and the Carian royalty. The one army the forces of Leyndell could not conquer in their prime, and it was supposedly a force of less than 20. How could this possibly be? The sorcery school of Ray Lucaria was founded by the primeval sorcerers Lusat and Azur, men who peered into the primeval current of space and time, learning how to manipulate the stars and lunar bodies. They were able to utilize glintstone as a medium for sorcery, a crystalline material found primarily within the land of Liurnia. Glintstone is often referred to as an amber-like substance, a sort of crystallized moment in time for the stars, which can hold the very life force of solar bodies and be manipulated in countless different ways. Azur and Lusat sought to fully understand the boundless potential of glintstone, and in doing so, they were banned from the very academy they founded. Their research became heretical in the eyes of the diplomatic higher-ups, and their findings were hidden away for none to see. Lusat and Azur became crystalline beings, petrified in stone, their bodies moving on instinct to reveal their secrets. Upon their exile, a new head of Ray Lucaria was chosen, the royal Carian lunar princess Renala. While most study of sorcery in Ray Lucaria was focused on the stars and manipulation of glintstone through understanding of them, the Carian family brought in a new perspective of sorcery practiced through the worship of the moons. And while most sorcerers viewed the moons as lesser than the stars, one man thought otherwise: Lazuli. Little is known about the sorcerers whom the different conspectuses are named after. What little we know about Lazuli is that he came to understand the stars as equal to the moon. Whether this means simply the full moon worshipped by Renala, or the moon as a general statement, including other moons like the dark moon, twin moons, or black moon, is unclear. What is clear is that Lazuli must have had a point. Lazuli's teachings were groundbreaking, enough so that an entire thought of study was named after him, and his students forced to wear outfits resembling his very face. The students of Lazuli Conspectus differ greatly from other schools of thought. The Lazuli sorcerers are donned in light blue, nearly white robes, resembling the face of the full moon. And while other schools practice sorcery through the medium of a glintstone staff, the students wield a signature wooden sword and an icy blue shield with a symbol of Carian royalty depicted upon it. The spells discovered by the Lazuli Conspectus differentiated greatly from other schools of thought in a few ways, mainly their physical shape. Lazuli Conspectus spells manifest themselves in the shape of weapons, literal daggers and swords. Through understanding of the moons and their equivalent power of the stars, glintstone manipulated with this knowledge gain a sort of metaphysical knightly oath, and take on a shape to symbolize that, a moonlight sword. Because of this, it seems Lazuli thought it only fitting that practicing students are given a sword to manifest spells, rather than a staff. The description of the Lazuli glintstone sword states, apparently once used as a staff of sorcery, this sword is made of wood. During combat training in different cultures, it is common to use wooden mimicries of real metal weapons to learn proper technique. The Lazuli glintstone sword has unique animations built in, and a spell-casting Ash of War. If this sword is the wooden practice piece, then what does a real professional high-level mastery weapon look like? Well, look no further than Lazuli himself, for he wields the real deal, in his iconic portrait. The Carian Knight sword is the signature weapon of those 20 unstoppable knights, a silver weapon embedded with large blue glintstone crystal, donned in the signature decorative gems of Carian royalty equipment. The glintstone embedded serves as a catalyst to cast Master Lazuli Carian sorcery. The sword shares the same unique animations as the Lazuli glintstone sword, with a far deadlier and more iconic Ash of War, the Carian grandeur, stated to be the Carian royal prestige embodied in skill. With this sword, the wielder may conjure a massive glintstone sword resembling those gifted by the Carian princesses to their suitors. The blade is large enough to swipe at large crowds of opponents and keep them at bay. This was the signature weapon of Lazuli and the Carian Knights. The conclusion is obvious then. Lazuli was the founder of the Carian Knights, the first sorcerer to see the power of the moons for what they really were, and thus swear allegiance to the Carian royal family. Higher-ranking sorcerers of the Lazuli Conspectus would thus take a knightly oath to the Carian royal family, don the signature silver armor and lapis lazuli-colored drapes, and wield a recreation of Lazuli's signature sword. The sword itself became the sort of defining symbol of the Carian Knights. Differing weapons wielded by the Carian Knights were forged to resemble the original sword, whether it be a colossal greatsword, halberd, light greatsword, or dueling shield. All were designed to resemble the original Lazuli Carian Knight sword, with that signature silver and blue color scheme, with the red decorative gems and hints of gold. Despite the Carian Knight sword being so iconic, there was a predecessor, the Carian sorcery sword. Or the modern-day Carian Knight sword is a short sword meant for slashing, piercing, and blocking, with a built-in spell for the Ash of War. The Carian Knight sword is a rapier-like piercing sword, with the capacity to cast any spell. This was the original weapon handed to all Carian Knights, but this was soon replaced by the Carian Knight sword with all its differing variations, as well as the Carian glintstone and glintblade staves. From a gameplay perspective, one might be puzzled as to why the Carian sorcery sword was replaced. The ability to cast any spells while also being a sword is in fact very useful. I believe the reason in-universe is the iconic blocking style of attack Lazuli taught his students. Blocking with a straight sword is effective. Not as great as a shield, but good enough. Blocking with a thin rapier-like sword is significantly less effective. And because it has a crystal and glass-like core made of a material which can shatter under enough physical pressure, the original Carian sorcery sword likely broke many times during combat, thus leading to it being replaced by a thicker, more well-rounded sword. The gameplay result of this is that the Carian sorcery sword can cast spells for heavy attacks, but does not have the iconic blocking strong attacks, while the Carian Knight sword cannot cast spells, but has the iconic blocking strong attacks. This reasoning would also explain the existence of the Carian glintstone and glintblade staves. They were given to the Carian Knights after combat had left their swords shattered time and time again, leaving them defenseless. Therefore, with the creation of the sturdier, more focus-driven blade, they were also given the staves as side pieces, which could cast any spells and be used in the case of a sword shattering. The Carian Knight sword and its signature fighting style would then become emblematic of the powerful small band of 20 knights during the Liurnian Wars. So much so that eventually Miquella made his own little bootleg version of the sword, to give to his dream hypothetical group of unstoppable knights who never came to be, likely because Leda killed them all in a paranoid blood-fueled rage. Miquella would not be the only one who wished to copy the Carian Knights. The Cuckoo Knights would be given spells for their service to Ray Lucaria, which would enchant their swords and shields in a far weaker imitation of the Carian Knights. Morgoth conjures specifically Carian Knight swords to wield alongside his cursed blade/cane. And in the realm of shadow, a type of grease was developed to be given to low-ranking Carian Knights, to coat their weapons in and once again mimic the powerful Carian Knight swords. The royal magic grease is the only object in-game which makes mention of low-ranking Carian Knights, strangely enough. And because we never see this grease used by any Carian Knights we fight in-game, I believe that there is really only one explanation for the low-ranking Carian Knights. In a few item descriptions are mentioned Enchanted Knights, a title for the Carian Knights starting class found in the Elden Ring open beta. I believe the low-ranking Carian Knights were known as the Enchanted Knights, as the starting class did not start you out with a Carian Knight sword. Perhaps the Enchanted Knights were an in-between class, above the Lazuli sorcerers but below the Carian Knights. Individuals who had sworn a knightly oath to Carian royalty, but lacked the knowledge and training to properly wield Carian Knight weaponry. Thus, they were given royal magic grease as a sort of way to prepare for the wielding of a proper Carian Knight weapon. Editing Garagi here. It's notable that enchanted is used as an adjective for the Carian Knights, as seen in the Glintblade Phalanx item description. So, though I still think it's possible that the Enchanted Knights closed network test starting class is being referenced in the idea of a low-ranking Carian Knight, it is possible that this could be discussing an entirely different concept, and Enchanted Knights are simply just a simile for Carian Knights, which can be used interchangeably. So then, who were the uber-exclusive less than 20 Carian Knights, who supposedly fought off the entire Golden Order to a stalemate? Who were the idle group whom every faction wished to replicate or defeat? Well, I believe I've tracked them all down, and I will list them off with numbers so that you may keep track of them. Number 1. Moongrum, found defending the hysterical Renala in Ray Lucaria, likely one of the highest-ranking Carian Knights considering his proximity to her. Number 2. Moonrathil, found within Castle Ensis. She is the trusted second-in-command of Relana, and acts as a chamberlain for Castle Ensis and its respective knights. Number 3. Loretta. Once loyal to the Carians, her loyalty is now to Mikola and Melania, after becoming deeply sympathetic to the plight of the Albinorics. She may or may not be an Albinoric herself. Number 4. Bowls the Carian Troll Knight. Imprisoned by the Cuckoos after they turned on the Carians, he was likely the highest-ranking Troll Knight, seeing as he has a proper name and has a unique buffing roar move. Number 5. The dead guy in Ray Lucaria. We find his armor at his grave. Rest in peace. Number 6. There's a Troll Knight still standing guard in Caria Manor. Number 7. There's a Troll Knight standing guard in Castle Ensis. Number 8. There's a Troll Knight outside the Frenzied Village, either standing guard of the Rise or watching over the Frenzied Village to keep it in check, or both. Number 9. Belfry Ghost Troll 1. Number 10. Belfry Ghost Troll 2. Number 11. Belfry Ghost Troll 3. And number 12. Shadow Realm Belfry Ghost Troll. Finally, number 13. The Puppet Troll Knight used in battle on the North Liurnian Highway. So there are 13 confirmed Carian Knights. But there are also a few examples of individuals who could have been Carian Knights, but it is never explicitly confirmed. Number 14. Relana the Twin Moon Knight. Though never explicitly stated to be a Carian Knight, she is of Carian royalty. She makes use of Carian Knight / Lazuli Conspectus spells, and her equipment resembles the Carian Knights, via the silver, blue glintstone, and lapis lazuli colored cloth. I believe personally that Relana is not technically a Carian Knight herself, but she makes use of the Carian Knight aesthetics, being a sort of apex equivalent of the Carian Knight. She is a knight for sure, but her knightly oaths seem to be to Mesmer and the Twin Moons, rather than the family itself. Number 15. E.G. the War Counselor, a troll sworn with an oath to serve the Carian royal family. E.G. is never said to be a knight, rather a war counselor in a smithy. He is donned in the signature lapis lazuli cloth that adorns the Carian Troll Knights, but he does not have the signature helmet, nor the signature troll sword. While it is possible once upon a time that E.G. was a Carian Troll Knight, and simply rose the ranks into War Counselor, there is no real evidence of this, and I personally don't believe he was ever a Carian Knight. Number 16 and 17. This one corpse that was found holding a Carian glintblade staff, and the owner of the Carian Knight sword found in the Great Coffin carriage. Getting these two minor ones out of the way, the corpse found holding the Carian glintblade staff is holding in their other hand a generic rapier, and they are not clothed in Carian Knight armor. In my opinion, this is probably just a random guy who stole one of these, or even was gifted one as a Lazuli sorcerer. Sir Gideon Ofnir and Jaren, who were both definitely not Carian Knights, also own Carian glintblade staffs, so there's a precedent set for non-Carian Knights to own these things. Maybe this guy was a lower ranking enchanted knight though, I don't know. Then there's the Carian Knight sword you find in-game that's found on the back of the giant carriage called a Great Coffin. A note in-game states great coffins travel the lands between, carrying the bodies of nameless fallen warriors, so it is entirely possible the body being carried here is a Carian Knight. The only thing that makes me hesitate is that the convoy following the coffin is comprised entirely of Cuckoo Knights and unaffiliated noblemen. The Cuckoos famously were an enemy of the Carian royalty, and thus their knights too. If you ask me, I think in that big coffin is a Cuckoo Knight who used the Carian Knight sword, as the Cuckoos are known to incorporate teachings and findings from the smarter Ray Lucaria sorcerers as their own. So this isn't a funerary ceremony for an enemy Carian Knight, this is a funerary ceremony for one of the few Cuckoo Knights who could actually figure out how to use a Carian Knight sword, or even a Cuckoo Knight who actually slew a Carian Knight in battle. Then again, maybe the Carian Knight defected to the Cuckoos. I personally don't believe that, but if you want to, that's okay, I won't stop you. Number 18. Healstor the Night Lord. This is a theory I want to dive into more in its own separate video eventually. But Healstor is a knight donned in silver armor, who wields what appears to be a moonlight greatsword, which is gifted to Carian royal spouses, and he is said to have been a knight felled by a hero in battle. To say it concisely, the theory is he was a Carian royal knight, wed to a Carian princess, who was felled in battle by Radagon during one of the Liurnian Wars. Like I said, I'll save this theory for another video, but the option is here if you choose to believe it. Number 19. Glintstone Dragon Adula. Less of a possible Carian Knight, more of a modern-day equivalent, Adula swore a knightly oath to Ranni, but she obviously isn't quite a Carian Knight. She's a dragon, however, she did create a Carian Knight-esque spell with Adula's Moonblade. It takes a near-identical form to the Carian Grandeur sword, only it's made of frost. I don't think she could be considered a Carian Knight, but she can cast similar spells, and exists as a sort of modern-day Carian Knight equivalent for Ranni in a post-Carian Knight world. And finally, 20 and 21. Two characters who I actually think may have once been Carian Knights, or at least Lazuli conspectus sorcerers, Miriam and Celavis. Celavis sells the Carian Phalanx spell, which was a Carian Knight spell. He also sells Carian Retaliation, which, while never called a Carian Knight spell specifically, it follows the theming of creating glintblades, and it can be applied to shields. Preceptor Miriam also uses Carian spells, namely Loretta's Great Bow and Great Blade Phalanx. When defeated in the inverted Carian study hall, she drops Lucidity, also a spell said to be used by the Carian Knights. Found within the study hall which she inhabits practically alone is also a Carian glintblade staff, which I believe was once hers. My theory is that the preceptors most trusted by Radagon and Carian royals were once Carian Knights, who were sworn into secrecy after Radagon saw their battle prowess, and they gained his trust for it. In order to keep their identities secret, they were to wear entirely new outfits, which neither looked like Lazuli students or Carian Knights. So they were also not to use Carian Knight or Lazuli equipment, meaning Miriam had to start using a generic Ray Lucarian staff and put her original Carian glintblade staff to rest inside the Carian study hall. So not counting the ones I don't believe, there are 15 Carian Knights in Elden Ring, plus maybe Healstor, which is a fairly satisfying number that's below 20. 9 of these knights are trolls, notably, with 4 of those trolls having decapitated themselves to eternally guard the belfries, in both base game and DLC. For Moonrathil to have a specifically kind relationship with the trolls is seemingly sweet, considering how the rest of the world treats them. But once you realize most Carian Knights are trolls, it makes it seem far more required to be a Carian Knight than being pure benevolence. This also makes the odd realization that despite the game seeming to focus on the Carian Knight sword being an iconic aspect of the Carian Knights, it is likely they were only used by 4 of the knights and Lazuli himself. The Carian Knights also seem to have a specific training/school grounds, the Carian Study Hall. Despite the name giving this away, it never really registered with me until I started researching this video that this is what the Carian Study Hall was for. The tower is a large structure with walls filled to the brim with books for studying, but more importantly, its walls are lined with statues of hooded figures wielding swords. This is a training grounds for the sorcerers, as well as a study grounds for the Carian family's most trusted students. The walkway at the center of the 3rd floor almost seems like the perfect place to practice dueling, and notably is marked with a long signature lapis lazuli carpet. Of course, the tower also contains Miriam, who I believe to be a former Carian Knight, and as I said before, what I believe to be her Carian glintblade staff. The 1st floor of the tower is also a very tiny classroom, with only a few small rows of benches, even less chairs up front, a desk for the teacher to place their inverted statue upon, and the ghost of a noble in the corner, as every classroom should have. I actually find the noble noteworthy, as he isn't donned in Lazuli robes. Matter of fact, none of the corpses are donned in Lazuli robes or Carian Knight armor, though one was holding a preceptor mask. I think it's likely these noblemen weren't actually students of the Lazuli Conspectus, but rather were working hands, those who sorted books, cleaned the tower, made their masks, and voluntarily turned into puppets for Miriam to control. Miriam also notably has puppets of Cuckoo Knights. Not sure if this implies that there were some Cuckoo Knights who were at some point welcomed into the Carian Study Hall to possibly become Carian Knights or Lazuli sorcerers, or perhaps these are just Cuckoo Knights that Miriam defeated in battle and made into puppets. So we know who the Carian Knights were, we know how well they served in combat, we know what happened to them post-Liurnian Wars, and we know a few others who were possibly also Carian Knights. But what about Lazuli himself? We don't know what happened to most of the Ray Lucarian teachers, matter of fact. Carolus, Lazuli, Olivinus, the twin sages, Haima, and Hierodios are all mysteriously missing within the game. Due to the nature of Haima and Hierodios being nomadic scholars, we can assume they might still be out there in the world, teaching their nomadic students like Wilhelm, the Scholar, or Hughes. But the others, well, the explanation isn't so clear. Perhaps Lazuli became a Carian Knight himself. Perhaps that grave found with the Carian Knight armor was his. Maybe Lazuli died heroically during the Liurnian Wars. Or perhaps maybe he met the same unfortunate fate as the other Conspectus teachers had. You see, we don't know where they all are, but we do know where one Conspectus teacher is, Selin, the Graven Witch. Selin was kicked out of Ray Lucaria for grave transgressions, abhorrent practices. Deep within Ray Lucaria you can find such transgressions. A mass made entirely of what seems to be differing glintstone crowns. The Academy is no stranger to more wicked practices, animating soldiers, glintstone-hungry zombies, working noblemen to death, even living jar potentate work. But creating these graven masses by looking too deep into the primordial current, that was too much. Maybe that was because it costed a few students' lives to make. Maybe. Or maybe it costed the lives of a few more important individuals. After all, that isn't just any staff held before it. That's the staff of one of the founders. The type of thing only the great Conspectus instructors would have access to. And when Selin finally finds her way back to Ray Lucaria, the only thing standing in her way is Jaren, not any of the conspectus teachers. Or maybe they're all just somewhere in Ray Lucaria we can't access. They are highly respected teachers after all. I doubt they'd be out and about ready to fight invaders. I don't know, man. Lazuli looks like a sweet guy. I hope he's doing alright. Well, that does it for my Carian Knights video. Hope you enjoyed. Like I teased, I want to cover Healstar and his possible connections to the Carians eventually. I would also like to do a video like this, but for other Knight factions in Elden Ring. Like the Crucible Knights, the Bloodhound Knights, or possibly the Knights Cavalry, if there's enough content there for those last two. If you love Carian Knights, then I feel obligated to show you towards the Conversions mod. It has a Carian Knight boss who sort of begs the question, what if one of these guys were really into crystals? And it's great fun. If you have more lore to say about the Knights, tell me in the comments. I got a lot of great feedback on my Bloodstar video. Enough so that I might have to do a second Bloodstar video before I do a video on the Conversions Bloodstar. Thank you all so much for the amount of traction I got on the Bloodstar video. I was so passionate about it, and to see it blow up past 40,000 views and gain me 500 plus subscribers was very crazy. I was so happy. This whole thing became so much more exciting for me, seeing actual success in some way. Maybe tell me your favorite Carian Knight in the comments or something. I think I like Balls the most because he's got a really funny name. Thank you all so much. I'll see you in the next video.